In this episode, we're going to talk about how to text them, and specifically 4 text messages that they will love. All right. And I want you to watch to the end because we have a special gift that we're going to give to everyone who takes action here. And it's worth like $200. So you definitely don't want to miss out on this special gift that we're going to give you guys at the end. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Thriving Marriage Podcast. We are excited and grateful to be here with you. Thank you so much for coming back to us, as the Thriving Marriage Podcast is the #1 resource for marriages in the world. So thank you to every single one of you as we continue our mission to help thousands of couples create a thriving marriage. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to text them, and specifically 4 text messages that they will love. All right. And I want you to watch to the end because we have a special gift that we're going to give to everyone who takes action here. And it's worth like $200. So you definitely don't want to miss out on this special gift that we're going to give you guys at the end. Before we get to that, though, we're going to go to our client win of the week, which comes from Jessica. Mark, you want to share Jessica's win with us?
Absolutely. So Jessica was sharing that Path, our program that Heather and I have put out, helped me realize some of the things I was doing to push my spouse away. Totally worth it. Jessica just, it was just a very quick little win. And here's the thing, like sometimes all it needs is a little bit of a push. Sometimes it just needs a little bit of information. Like one of the things that we try to do with Path is point out some of the pitfalls that people fall into as they're trying to patch their relationship back together. And I would say, Jessica's comment right here, just that it helped her stop pushing her spouse away. That's something that we can fairly consistently do with just some simple steps. So it's great to see that this is working out for Jessica.
Yeah, I know for me personally, when I realized like that one of the things I've been doing has just been a big mistake and I didn't even realize it, that awareness causes a huge pivot. And one of my favorite sayings is do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And so sometimes I think we get really think it's really complicated to change a relationship or to save a marriage from divorce or end an affair. But it's actually, when it comes down to it, we all have some pretty basic core needs and there's some commonalities. And when we can learn to make a few shifts in what we're doing, then the results can really change. And so thank you, Jessica, for sharing that with us and everyone else who's following the Path process. Keep it up. You guys are rocking it. All right. So over in our Thriving Marriage Facebook group, we asked you guys a question and we asked you, what would you like for us to answer about texting your spouse? And we got a variety of answers here. We know some of you were asking, is texting an acceptable replacement for a conversation these days? And it seems like with all these kids and running around different directions, it's like the only way to really talk about things. We even had, questions about why is my spouse still texting this other person? How can I get them to stop texting this other person? How do I get my spouse to actually respond to my text? He ignores anything and is simply about daily life things. Do you have a cheat sheet about what text conversations would be good? Sometimes it's hard to know the tone of what they really mean. What would you do when they're giving you the silent treatment? How do you build connection through text? What do you do when you text your wife who has an affair when she stops pushing you and goes into pause mode? So this person's very familiar with our Path method and they know that the pause is powerful. And so they're now wondering what I can do here to try to get the friendship back, to build the connection back. So a lot of really, really great questions, and we are going to answer those today. So Mark, what is our first tip of the day of how to text your spouse with these different challenges that people are going through?
Sure. Well, so here's the thing. I want to point out before we really, really get into this. Communication, just in general, can be somewhat complicated. I'm going to admit that I pulled a lot of these tips from one of our own workshops that we did. That workshop really went in depth. It was a 2-hour workshop. So there's a lot of things that can be at play here. Like Heather, you were reading off all these questions, and we saw all the different kinds of issues going on, whether that's affairs or re-engaging with a partner after a long time, or whether it is sexting someone else but not your husband or wife, and all these things. Uh, there are some like good ways to start going about this. So the kind of the first idea, the first kind of text is basically a preparation sort of text. And this kind of depends on what situation is going on. Like, when is it okay to start engaging casually with text messages? I know a lot of people in our group, Heather, are in a bit of a crisis situation, to put it lightly. And it's not terribly uncommon for there to need to be some amount of space, especially if there's been a lot of desperation, if there's been a lot of pushing and like a lot of tension in communication. So just what I'm talking about here is like, before we get into like text messages, you may need to, you know, set up the situation a bit first. But if you're going to start texting them, I think a good place to start is some acceptance and empathy. So this would be like, when we're talking about 4 text messages, this would be the first one I would start with, just to set the stage and set the tone and get things going right. We talk a lot about this, Heather, don't we, in terms of like having some understanding, having some acceptance, having some empathy. These are common things that if you've been listening to our podcast, we talk about all the time, right?
Yeah, starts with our path method, understanding their perspective. It's all about that acceptance, that empathy. And we always want to be really clear, especially if you're new to our podcast or new to our method. This isn't saying that what you're doing is right, but it's saying, I see this as where you are at, which is a very different thing. So like if they're having an affair, you're not saying, hey, this is great, you're having an affair, I totally accept that. No, that's not what we're saying. But we're accepting that is where our partner is at. And we're accepting that those are the reasons that they're feeling that way. Because the reality is that we all feel the way that we feel. And you can't just say that the way someone feels is wrong, or that they shouldn't feel that way, because we all just feel the way we feel. The way I feel is right to me. The way you feel is right to you. And sometimes one of the mistakes that we see is trying to argue or prove that they shouldn't feel that way or change the way they feel. And that never leads to that connection. It only leads to more disconnection, only pushes them away more. So that's why exactly we want to start with that acceptance and even some empathy, that this is where you are at. And I see you. And one of the best feelings that we can have is when someone understands us and where we are at. And so when you give that to your partner, you're not saying I agree with what you're doing, but you can say, I understand that this is where you're at. It's a very different thing. And I want to make sure that we clearly understand the difference there. And I know it can be sometimes challenging to get out of your own pain and out of your own perspective, your own story about what's going on, your own desires, your own fears, and step into your partner's shoes. But if you're wanting to draw them back to you naturally, then this is the first step. And it is a powerful shift that happens there.
I think a lot of times even if you have some empathy or acceptance or understanding, there can be a big divide between two people. And there has to be something done about that. A big thing that we talk about a lot, and I think this applies here, is a need for some sort of common goal. If your partner's saying, I'm done, I'm like with this other person, and you're like, hey, I get where you're at, why don't we talk about this a little bit? It might be a bit jarring. And, if you keep pushing on this, like, let's talk about this, let's fix things. So I'm saying that like you're setting this up, make sure that you're keeping that in mind, that there's a reason to start engaging messages if you're like that far on the spectrum of having problems with communication. A lot of times, especially if you can join in on some of the goals that your partner already has, it can be a lot easier to start communication. Like Heather, we see this all the time. We can reinitiate communication if like the goal is something a little bit easier to swallow, such as like, hey, let's make sure that we cut out some of the tension. Let's make sure that we are co-parenting well together. Let's make sure that we can at least talk to each other civilly. And if you have this kind of goal in mind, together that's agreed upon, you have a bit of an arena, an area where you can actually start having some more conversation. And that's
Exactly.
like, that's like what we want to all set up. These are the kind of messages that you need to start with, is what we're getting at.
Right. And I just want to be clear, like, yeah, we're sharing with you 4 messages that they'll love and how to text them based on where you might be at in your journey, whether you're at the beginning, like where things are really volatile, maybe there's a lot of distance, maybe there's a lot of, crisis mode going on, or maybe you're a little further along in the journey. It really does come back to this path process. And I just want to say, texting in and of itself is not going to save your marriage. Okay. I hope no one came to this saying, oh, that's going to be the silver bullet. If I just send this one magical text, then everything's going to be great in my marriage. Because I understand that sometimes a headline or a topic like this, a title of a podcast, could seem a little like a hack or, this like secret thing. It's not. Okay. It's not going to save your marriage in and of itself. But just like anything, the way that your text conversations are going right now is kind of the symptom of the deeper issues and the deeper challenges. And the reality is that in my world, texting is convenient, but it often leads to a lot of miscommunication because it is hard to convey tone. It is hard to convey meaning. It is very easy to misunderstand each other and go into defensiveness or blame or any of those patterns that you may have. And it's just easy to just misunderstand each other sometimes about basic things, right? Sometimes just coordinating schedules can get misunderstood. So it's not the ideal form of communication, but because it's so prevalent, it has to be addressed. We're all texting, we all use this, and it's just part of reality of relationships right now. So you're not going to save your marriage by texting alone, but 2, it's showing you that there are some symptoms of other things going on there and can improve your communication as you learn these same principles. So I hope that that's clear as we go through these. Yes, these are some great ways to shift and improve your texting. But deeper than that, I want you to take these same principles and apply them to your communication in general. Okay. So empathy and understanding. Mark, can you give us an example of someone whose spouse, they're in crisis mode and they don't have a lot of acceptance or empathy right now? There's a lot of miscommunication. There's a lot of blaming. How would they start? Like, can you give us an example of a good text message that conveys some of that acceptance or empathy and maybe talks about, setting some of these common goals?
Absolutely. I think a good place to start here would be talking about different levels of empathy. I think, and aiming for some of these deeper levels would be a good place to start with this. So out in psychology wilderness, there is this idea of different levels of empathy. Just the 10-second rundown. We have like a level 1 level of empathy, which is very little understanding, generally dismissive. Your partner might be hurt and you're like, well, but I'm hurting too. Okay,
right.
But essentially,
no connection.
No acknowledgement of what's going on. Level 2 might be like, okay, I can get that you're hurt, but but you did this to me. It's like, here's the acknowledgement, but ultimately still dismissive. A level 3 would be like, okay, I can see that you're really hurt about this. It's just a general reflective statement that's out there. And that's at the point where we stop doing damage. Is just, we've gone through 2 levels of just not helpful interactions, and now we're just not doing damage at level 3. And what we're really aiming for in some of these preparatory understanding, acknowledging messages is a level 4 or 5. Level 4 being, hey, I can react to their feelings and I can give some interpretation of underlying feelings. Hey, I can see that you're really upset about this. I can see that this is a big issue for you and that this isn't some problem that's going to go away soon. It's, hey, I can look at what's going on and what's underneath. Level 5 is quite a bit deeper, you have some acknowledgement of the depth of feelings or how the feelings have happened across time, like the breadth, BREADTH, breadth of the feelings. As an example, it might be like, hey, I can see that you're not talking to me. This must be you must be really upset, and I can see that this is not just based off of what's been going on now. This has been something that's been building up for a long time, and I can see why you might have some discomfort in communicating right now. Right
Yeah,
there, if you want to start off with something good and you want them to start opening up a bit more, you need to have something at that level, because otherwise, because like the big problem why they aren't talking to you, why you probably have to resort to text messages, is very, very likely because they don't feel heard, and this kind of message right here really helps set the tone otherwise.
exactly. One of the things I love that we do with our clients is we can show them exactly how to respond to some text messages,
Mhm.
because sometimes they're really challenging and they're really tricky. Sometimes you get a text like this, which one of our clients did, of "Stop texting me. I told you it's over. Move on." And that was her response to him, right? And he's sitting there, he's like, "Okay, what do I do from here?" And our coaches, we showed him exactly how to respond to that. And the response, I'll just give the example here, for this individual where he was at was, "I can see for you, it is over. I can see that. I can understand that that's how you feel." Right? And that's acceptance. And it's not acceptance of that I love this choice that you're doing, but it's acceptance that I see that this is where you're at, and the validation that this is true for them. And that brought down the walls. So instead of begging or pleading, "Please give me another chance," which is what he had been doing, right? "Please don't say that. Like, please give me another chance. Please, let's go out on Friday and let's talk about this. Please don't block me. Please work on this with me. Please, let's go to counseling and try to work on this." Or the manipulating, or any of those things. When you stop those, so the begging, the pleading, the manipulation are the three big ones that we definitely want to stop. Or the freezing. Some of you are like, "Well, there's nothing I can do. She says don't talk to me, it's over, I should just move on." Well, maybe I should. But if something inside of you is saying, "I don't want that to be the end of the story, I want to know I gave my marriage everything I could," then freezing isn't going to get you the right result either, right? And so it's knowing that there is possibility, there is option here, but you need to do it in the right way. And that's what I love about what our coaches do with you guys, and what Mark does, right? Is works with you on how to respond to some of these text messages in a way that actually creates some connection and starts to lower those defense mechanisms going on inside of your partner.
Yeah.
So really, really good. Yeah, I love it. Are we ready to move on to
Yeah,
our
the
second
second
one?
kind.
Yes.
So we, have to set the stage. If now this is assuming that the goal here is building up some connection, building, bringing down some amount of walls, making things a bit more comfortable. Like Heather said, these messages alone wouldn't necessarily solve all the relationship problems. But the second type here would be re-engaging text messages. So if you kind of like set the stage, hey, I understand where things are going, and you're ready to like have some more casual conversation. Um, what I'm going to say is this is going to be a lot more about style and tone than specific messages, though I do want to give a couple specific messages here. Couple things to keep in mind, and like I said, we do go a lot more in depth into this in the workshop, but like a couple key things here are to keep the tone casual and a bit more spontaneous, I think would be two big ones. Uh, First off, if you're trying to build up connection, not to solve problems, but if you're trying to build up connection, casual tone is going to be preferred. Like your messages shouldn't have an agenda or a grand plan. You shouldn't be, as Heather, you were just talking about it, like trying to beg and plead them, like, please, let's work on this. Yeah, it's just the situation here, Heather, tends to be viewed as self-serving when it's more, the begging and pleading. But this more casual tone where you don't have an agenda or a grand plan, and your message isn't trying to win them back, tends to be received a lot better. It should be the start of a friendly conversation without pressure. So, as an example here, hey, the kids really wanted to go to the park in your area. If this is if you're separated, we'll be here for a while. Let me know if you're around and you want to join us. Very little pressure, very casual, it's spontaneous. It is if they say no, okay. And if they say yes, then there's an opportunity for more connection. But like this kind of message is very rarely outright rejected. They might decline the offer, but this is some ways to start some conversation. Even if they reject it, even if they say, don't invite me to these things, it is some opportunity to clarify some boundaries. But like I said, it's less likely to be rejected in this sort of format.
Right. But I,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
what I love about the first one, it's like a total pattern interrupt, right? And all of these text messages can be absolute pattern interrupts. When I'm talking about a pattern interrupt is you and your spouse have this like dance going on, right? You have this typical way of doing things. You have these reoccurring patterns or these reoccurring cycles. And if you look back, you can probably see what that is for you. We talk about the drama triangle. Encourage you to listen to that podcast from, several weeks ago, to see what your part of that pattern might be. But when you don't step into that same role anymore and you're not playing the victim and you're like, maybe you're saying, oh, woe is me. And, you should leave the other person and you need to change and you need to work on this with me. And I'm so hurt here and I'm in so much pain. And, you playing the victim role. And instead of doing that, you actually validate where they're at. And you say, I see that for you, this is really hard. Oh my goodness. Like your spouse is going to be like, what just happened? Like, can you see it? Like I can see it in my mind. Like your spouse is looking at their phone and they're like, wow, that's never how Richard usually texts me or how Cassandra usually texts me. That's very different. It's going to get their attention, which is one of the first goals that we have in the path process is to get their attention in the right way. So they start to question the narrative about us, right? So as we continue to pattern interrupt with doing things in a different way than we normally do, it's going to get our spouse's attention. And they're going to start to then, as we be consistent with these things, have some curiosity about it. When we invite them to do something with no pressure, that's going to feel very different perhaps to them than the sly, like try to get you back, try to reel you back in. And anything that has a whiff of manipulation or a whiff of personal agenda there is going to send them fleeing from you again. And I know that can be really challenging to know how to do that, which is why we guide you on exactly like word by word what to say and how to say it. And more importantly, how to get to a calmer internal place yourself where you truly don't have the pressure, where you don't feel like you're in desperation. And when you make that like more internal shift emotionally to a calm centered place, then that's like the magic ingredient. Because yes, you could send the same words all the time, but if in your own heart, you're not feeling that, it's normally going to come across in some way or another in your interaction with your spouse. So going to the deepest level there, we're talking about text, which is a little surface level, but going even deeper into what we really do in this program and our coaching with this method is to help you make those internal shifts so you don't feel desperate, you don't feel needy, you don't feel the need to manipulate, you don't need feel the need to try to win them back. And you can come from a place that is lighthearted, that's comfortable, that's spontaneous. And you're like, I'm in a good place. I'm actually okay no matter what happens. And that's one of my favorite things that we see when this happens with our clients when they get here is they're like, I'm actually feel like I'm okay no matter what. And it's really freeing because I'm no longer putting all this pressure on myself and my spouse and the marriage to work. I feel like I have space now to receive what I'm wanting rather than trying to force it to happen. So this text message here about being really, comfortable, really spontaneous, really casual about it is the symptom of getting to that internal place, right? So if you're not in that kind of internal place, then there's work to do and you can do it because it's just learning. It's just learning how to emotionally process things and step into that true version of yourself. And so that's the deeper level of what we do here. These are the right ways to go about the texting. When you combine both, that's when the magic really happens. So can you give us an example maybe about being, again, really casual, really spontaneous, and a text message that your spouse would respond well to?
So like a really good spontaneous message might be something, noticing something that you've been involved with, something that reminded you of your partner. an example of like you said, hey, I just ran into this person that's probably more obsessive about whatever their hobby happens to be than you are. And then you insert the actual reason for the text. Anyway, I'll be by shortly to pick up the kids. Anyway, hey, I just have this thing that I need to drop off. But like, here is some basically a primer for a conversation. Um, Here's this quirky person that's more obsessive about knitting or Star Wars or biking or CrossFit or whatever happens to be. Uh, and like I said, it sparks this conversation. It doesn't have an agenda, and it's an ability to connect on something that isn't whatever the tense situation, the tension that you have between you and your partner. And we want these kind of interactions to build up more connection. So,
Love it.
yes.
All right. That brings us to our third type of text message that they will love. And that is gratitude text messages, being specific about things that you are grateful for. And again, I love this because, yes, this is, we're talking about texting surface level, but underneath it, it's making some deeper internal shifts inside of you for gratitude, because gratitude is healing, and gratitude puts us into a different type of energetic state. And it's very, hint, attractive. People that are grateful and happy and fun to be around are really attractive. We want to be around people that appreciate us, right? And that see the good in us. And so when you start to convey more of these messages and more of what we call home messages, right? Of I appreciate this about you. I recognize this about you. I am grateful for this about you, without overdoing it. And again, we're not coming from this like sneaky agenda, like, I'm going to show you I'm grateful so you want to come back to me. No, that's not it. Like, it's not a tactic. It's not a hack. But if it's genuine, then it is incredibly healing to a relationship. So Mark, what have you seen? What are some poor examples of how to use gratitude? And then some good high levels of expressing gratitude through this third type of gratitude text message.
Do you remember, I'm just chuckling a little bit to myself. Do you remember when we were first trying to build up the business? Didn't we have like a big training on gratitude? This was like before
yeah.
and I'm just kind of chuckling, like, I'm chuckling at this because, one, I'm looking back at that and I'm like, man, it was some decent content, but no one bought that at all.
No one bought that, no.
No one bought it at all. But two, I'm going to agree with you that, like, hey, gratitude can be really good in a relationship, even if no one found any value. This was, just to clarify, this is like many years ago, and like Heather and I were trying to like build out an audience. We're like, yeah, people need some gratitude in their life.
Gratitude.
But anyway, very. Besides that, yes, gratitude is really it is helpful in a relationship. Some thoughts on that. If you're trying to make this be a bit more genuine, if you're trying to get it a bit more accepted, or to really build things up, I always say, hey, focus on gratitude towards who they are instead of what they've done. Yeah, it's going to have a much bigger impact. And I would just like compare and contrast. One message you might be like, hey, thanks for picking up the kids yesterday, versus, hey, I've noticed that you've been really supportive and you've always been there for me. I appreciate like you being there when I couldn't pick up the kids.
Right.
Much more impactful, the second one, because it's a comment on them as a person, their traits, who they are. And I think like when you appreciate what someone has done, tends to really just get lost in a lot of the noise. It's like this, I don't know about you, Heather. To me, it feels very much the same thing as like when I'm at the grocery store and like the cashier is like, hey, have a nice day. Great, that's wonderful. But it really means nothing.
Right. Or how are you doing? Like, they don't really want to know how you're really doing. They're not that much invested in you. Right?
It feels a lot like those kind of things that we just say, hey, thanks for picking up the kids. Hey, thanks for making dinner. Versus, hey, I really notice you being supportive today, and it's something I'm really attracted to. Is a very different sort of message.
Right.
So, and we can gauge this based off of like where you're at in your relationship. Like a low level intensity gratitude message, be like, "Hey, you've always been really thoughtful and there for the children. Thanks for taking care of the kids for me." Versus more of like a mid level, like you're doing like there's a ton of divide between the two of you, but things are a little tense. Hey, you might say, "Hey, you've been really caring towards me lately, and it's been especially nice to have someone looking out for me with everything going on." The difference here is like, hey, I'm noticing your traits towards someone else versus, hey, I'm appreciating these efforts towards me versus a high level, much more intimate statement like, hey, I really enjoyed our sex last night. It's nice to have such strong connection in our relationship. That's going to be much more of a very appreciated message, I imagine, but much more reserved for when things are going in a healthier direction.
Right. So wherever you're at, kind of gauge that. And if you need help with that, of course, that's what we do, is help you know which kind of messages are appropriate. Now, Mark, over the years, we've helped a lot of clients, right? We've helped hundreds
Yes.
and hundreds of couples save their marriage. And we've seen a lot of different things that can go wrong with text messaging, including sometimes, I know I can think of at least several dozen off the top of my head that were constantly texting their spouse the wrong messages, like these begging messages or these pleading messages, or texting her every day. Like I can think of, especially for some reason, a lot of male clients are coming to mind where they're like, I'm going to show her that I love her. I'm going to fight for my marriage. I'm going to prove every day that I care about her and I'm in this. Right. And so they would send tons of these overbearing text messages.
Yeah.
And so what we're saying is that if you're at a good, healthy level place, that might be just great, to say, look at our wedding anniversary and our wedding day. And I'm so, glad we're committed for life and, stuff like that. But if you're at a low level in your marriage right now and things are not going very well, they absolutely backfire. So what I'm hoping to illustrate here is that you need to be mindful of what you may be doing that is unintentionally pushing your spouse further away with your texting and in all other behaviors as well, because you may think that you're doing the right thing. You may think that you're conveying all this love and commitment and fighting for your marriage. But if your spouse is not receiving it right now, it is backfiring. And so this is one of the really common mistakes that I see happen here, and making sure that we do the right things in the right order. So I think that's a really good reminder here, Mark, of what level are we at and what's going to be received well and what's going to absolutely backfire or be completely inappropriate or ineffective at this stage. So as you're listening to this, check in and think about, how well is my spouse actually responding to my text messages? How well are they responding to my communication efforts in general? And if it's not going well, then we need to help you tweak that.
I can think of a very real example. I was actually just talking to someone earlier today, and like one of the big pain points in the relationship was like this point where the husband was putting in a lot of effort to like try to make things good. And so he gave this example of this flowery anniversary gesture that he did in these messages that he sent, and how it fell flat and how he felt rejected to that. But it was large part because he wasn't reading the situation well, and wasn't recognizing that, hey, there was a lot of grievances at that point in the relationship, and wasn't acknowledging those. And so like what you're saying there is very like, here's a healthy thing in healthy relationships, like putting in a lot of effort around an anniversary and having lots of messages of love, but in the wrong context actually put a wedge in the relationship.
Right. She's not feeling heard. She's not feeling understood. She's not feeling respected. The grievances aren't being acknowledged. And then it leads to further hurt on your part, because now you're feeling rejected. Now you're feeling like everything I'm doing isn't working. I did this huge thing. And why didn't she care? She must not love me. There must be nothing I can do in the marriage.
Yeah.
Wrong. It's not that it's that. It's that you just need to do it in the right way and be able to understand the situation better. So if you're feeling like you can relate to that, let us know in the comments. And then as we wrap up this third type of texting, gratitude feels really good. And we love to be seen and appreciated for who we really are, not just what we do, but who we really are. So remember that it's much better to show gratitude for who they are rather than what they do. And put a comment down there about a time when you got a text of gratitude from someone and someone expressed appreciation to you and how that made you feel. And then think about how you can apply that to where you're at right now in your marriage and whatever level you are, and how it may be an incredible way to be able to build some connection and some oxytocin, which is the love hormone, some feel good love connection there, right? It feels really good to be appreciated and to have that gratitude. All right, let's go to text number 4, which is our reminder texts. What are reminder texts about?
A good reminder text is calling attention to something that they may be interested in, or calling attention to like a fond memory of some sort. Once again, disclaimer, this is to build connection, and it doesn't solve problems, but it can build connection. What we're trying to aim for here is you're trying to pick a topic that may interest your partner and reminds them of something positive that you've done together. The advantage of this, the reason why it can work, is if you pull it off well, it's generally fairly low key, and you can create that low key sort of interaction, especially if there's another purpose for reaching out to them. So maybe some examples of this. And I think that format that we just had was good, like a low level, mid level, high level. A low level example of this might be say, hey, remember that band we saw at the concert last year? The one where we had that crazy time and spilled our drinks on each other? They're in town next week. Thought you should know, as you kept telling me how much you like them. And that's it.
No pressure. Yep.
It's not an invitation necessarily. It might turn into an invitation, but it's like you said, Heather. There's no pressure on something like that. It's a nice reminder and calls attention to a positive memory. Mid-level might be, hey, just a friendly reminder that Fall Festival is coming in next week. I'd love to see you and the kids there. I always thought you looked good in those fall colors. Let me know if you have any plans. I don't know about you, Heather. We have like some big fall festivals where we are, and it's always like a good memory for me and my family when we go and attend those kind of things. And that's what this, something like that. If there's like traditions, if there's like some cool events that you've gone to, the purpose of something like that, once again, calls attention to a fun memory, and it's just a good reminder. And there's like some casual, low pressure invitation. That's more of a mid-level versus a high level. Hey, I'm so excited the farmers market is reopening, like especially with like COVID and stuff going on. We always love going. For some reason, I know we kind of got a little handsy when we were out without the kids. Why don't we go? It's like, here's this reminder, like here's this of like positive interactions. I don't know. Do other people use that term? I don't know if that's just me and Jennifer sort of think. Handsy? Is that a
handsy?
Okay.
Must be guys, but I'm sure others do too.
Okay. To explain, it's when you might have your hands might wander a little bit. I was gonna say inappropriately, but in a marriage, it's very appropriate, sort of.
Very appropriate. So yes.
That's what I mean. But a nice fun reminder of some sort of interaction like that is what we're aiming for. Still, if you're at that high level, you can put a little bit more excitement into it. You can put a little bit more of a direct invitation into that sort of text message. And actually,
right,
that excitement, that positive emotion tends to be even more connecting. People tend to be attracted to that sort of thing if the context fits.
Exactly. So that was my next question there for you guys to leave in the comments as you've been listening to us for this podcast. What level do you think you are at right now? Are you a low level where you're just working to start to reconnect, start to, resolve some issues, start to communicate? Are you at the mid level where maybe you're at the friend stage or they've hit the pause button? Or are you at the high level where, you have a marriage where you can talk very intimately and passionately and have it be well received? So be very mindful of what level you're at and what communication fits that level. And just as we sum this up here, a couple of reminders. If you're doing any of the following here, I want you to stop it. If you're begging, pleading, criticizing, blaming, negative, volatile, name calling, okay, I could go on. There's probably more. If you're doing any of those in your current texting, I want you to stop it, because the first thing we want to do is stop the damage and reduce the tension. And any of those things that you're doing, manipulating, desperation, they're only going to push your spouse further away. So if that's not what you want, then let's start to apply these things in a new way. And remember, text messages alone, they're not going to solve your marriage entirely. No one ever was proposed to, I don't think, and started a relationship from text messages alone. And so text messages alone are not going to save your entire marriage. They're an element that we're discussing today that we can definitely improve, because there's opportunity there to improve for all of us, right? And so the purpose of these messages are to build up comfort, connection, and positivity. So Mark and I hope, illustrated some text messages that are appropriate for wherever you're at in this stage of your marriage, and to make sure that you don't do these things that are going to unintentionally backfire or be ineffective. So as you focus on how can I increase some comfort here? How can I increase some connection? How can I increase some positivity? We can guide you on exactly how to do that. Mark, any final thoughts on these 4 different types of text messages and how to text them?
Yeah, I just want to, I know we've been saying this a lot. These specific text messages have a purpose, but the disclaimer here is they are not going to resolve bigger things like issues of trust, huge mistakes like affairs, history of dismissive listening, issues with that. And certainly we have solutions for those sort of circumstances if that's what you need support with. But yeah, I apply the right tool to the right problem and you're going to get much better results. That's all.
Yeah. So if you're wanting help with that, I encourage you to book a free breakthrough call with us, and we can assess your marriage and see exactly how to help you resolve those deeper issues. You can do that at highthrivecoaching.com/apply. We'll put the link here below and in the comments and in the description, so you guys can click on that and book one of those calls right away. Our spots do fill up very quickly though, so apologies if there's no spots right now. I encourage you to check again. And if this speaks to you, do it right away so you don't miss out. And speaking of our full text messaging workshop, that is our gift that we want to give you guys today. So I want you to comment workshop, the word workshop, or if that's too challenging, just put me. Comment me or comment workshop if you'd be interested in hearing more about how to build up your relationship through text messages, learn about the pitfalls, what not to say, how you may unintentionally be pushing them away, and what to do. And we will get you guys a $200 free training that we did, a full 2-hour workshop on this exact issue that's going to get you solutions for that right away. And if you book a call or join the Path Course program, then we will definitely get you that guide right away. So $200 workshop on texting. If you guys want that, comment me or comment workshop, and we will get it to you right away. Awesome. So that's super exciting. Thanks for being willing to put that together, Mark. I'm excited for people to use that. Now let's go to our marriage mythbuster. So the marriage mythbuster is this: there is a right way and a wrong way to make your relationship great. Where does this myth really come from? And is it true or not?
I think, so just to say, you're asking where it comes from. We take a lot of the comments that we see in the Facebook group. We take note of things that our clients say. So these myths always come from actual people who are saying these things. So I think a lot of where this comes from is this idea of, hey, I enjoy whatever, the right way happens to be to make a relationship good. And therefore it's right. Like you might be saying, I think that a relationship is great if they have tons of communication and they share very deeply. And I think that in many circumstances that can create a good relationship, but it may not apply to everyone. So here's the thing. We have this relationship podcast here, and I will tell you, not all of our advice may apply in all situations. Heather, we were just talking about how these text messages don't necessarily work in certain circumstances, and they don't accomplish certain goals. And we can see this in a lot of theories. If you go out there into psychology land, like out there into the wild, we have a lot of different personality theories and conflict style theories. Like we could take Gottman as an example. Gottman is a very well respected name within relationship research. Years and years and years of research. He's like the guy here. And after, one of his ideas that's out there is there are different styles of conflict. Three functional styles of conflict and one dysfunctional one. He says, okay, there's a functional style where, if both partners are avoidant, it can have some sense of stability to a certain degree, I would say. There's, now I would say that, if it goes to an extreme, that can be unhealthy. I'm just going to point that out. There's another conflict style, validating. And I can say if both partners are validating in their conflict style, that tends to be very healthy. Surprisingly, the last one, volatile, can be a stable relationship conflict style. If both partners are volatile, I had friends like this where they would be yelling at each other and really angry at each other, and I'd be like, "What is going on?" Because my wife and I are not like that at all. And this was a little bit too much information from that friend. But then they're like, "But yeah, but we'd have great passionate makeup sex afterward," and I'd be like, "Great, I didn't need to hear that necessarily from you guys." But like, what I'm getting at is like it worked for them. There's a high passion in their arguments and a high passion, in other areas, and it made sense. The last one, the dysfunctional type, is a hostile conflict style. The thing is, like, we'll take that example slightly more in depth. The problems show up when the conflict style, there's a mismatch. And we can see this in other areas too. You have love languages, right? We're very familiar. Lots of people here who listen to us, very familiar with love languages. You might say, "Hey, I did this. I made breakfast for my spouse. I'm trying to show them that I care. Why aren't they doing the same thing for me? Do they not care?" You might say, the right way to make the marriage good is to make breakfast for your spouse, to do acts of service, when they might be trying to express care in a different way. I know my wife and I had to have this conversation some years ago and had to get this settled a bit. Had to have some better understanding. We could look at personality types. If you like the Enneagram, sometimes I talk about the Enneagram. There's 9 personality types, and they each have their own varying motivations and styles of interaction. And you might say it's better to be very out in the open and boisterous and be in your face, and that might be a personality style for you. That might be the right way to make the relationship great. What I'm getting at here is, and I'm going to say there's a right way here, to make a relationship great in terms of all of these different theories, is there has to be room for each partner to have their own right way, and for there to be some room for acceptance of your partner's right way. And I think when I see that, I tend to see a lot more success. Not that there is a specific right way, but is there room for each of you to have your own right way?
I love that. Yeah. I will personally say, I fell into the trap of thinking that there were right ways. I got really sucked into, if you just do the 5 love languages, or if you just do the love dare, then that's going to solve everything. And I would do it, and I would work myself to the bone, it felt like. And it didn't make much difference at all. And so I think that is really true.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. They're like, hey, we have this secret method here. There's this silver bullet that's going to solve all your problems. It's going to be right there. So you have the love dare or the 5 love languages or whatever. Yeah. I think we all have
what I love
fallen.
about what we do, I mean, we talk about our path method, and you may think, well, you're pushing your method, and we are. But the first part of our method is actually to have perspective into your partner's method and into their world and to what works for them. And that does create that space for it to work for both of you. And the way that the relationship needs to work, it creates the space for both partners to do that. So I think that that's a really beautiful thing that we have, and our clients have experienced that. And I know I've experienced that when I realized that my husband and I had very different styles of doing things, different ways of emotionally processing things, different love languages, different personality types, whatever, right? And so we have space now in our relationship for both. And that's what makes our relationship great. Not that his way is right and my way is wrong, or vice versa. It's that we both have space in the relationship for it to work in the way that's unique to us. And that's what we hope that you can create as well with your partner, because over time and over challenges of the years that come and the different things that you guys are going to face, that's the key to having a thriving marriage, is going back to these basics of the path process and having perspective. So awesome. Any other final thoughts there, Mark?
No, I think we're good for today. We've gone over a lot of things, from text messages to relationship styles. I think we've covered a lot of ground.
Awesome. Yeah. So I would love, as you guys are listening here, and think about what stood out to you the most, and leave a comment about what stood out to you. What type of text message may be lacking in your marriage right now? What kind of texting are you going to stop doing? And what are you going to start doing more? What is your takeaway? Let us know and inspire all of us, because the more we put that out there, the more other ideas are going to come to other people. We can kind of mastermind together and see what's really working and get that positive energy and that positive movement going. So as you guys are watching this, if you like more videos just like this one, then make sure you guys subscribe to us here on YouTube or our podcast as well. And we hope that you guys like this video and give us a thumbs up. Let us know if you are loving it. We'll get more your way. And next week, we're going to share with you 3. Is that what we're doing? I just read it. I'm like, I don't think that's what we're doing.
No, because it sounds awful. We have a little bit of a faux pas here, a little bit of a mistake. I think, how about like next week's topic is a surprise? We'll
do like 3 trust. We'll do 3 trust restoration secrets you won't be able to resist. Because, okay, in our outline, I had 3 text messaging things that they're not going to be able to resist, which is exactly what we covered today. So goof on our part, but what we're going to talk about next week is 3 trust restoration secrets they won't be able to resist, even if trust has been broken, or they're having an affair, or you've been dealing with a lack of trust for a long time. That is what we're going to share next week. Yes. All right. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks for listening to The Thriving Marriage, your A to Z blueprint for not just surviving marriage, but thriving. Until next time, my friends, thrive on.